You are welcome to this enlightening section that is designed for all our undergraduate students, especially those one that we call teachers in training. It can also be used for students that are on teaching practice, maybe in College of Education, University of Education, or you are in a conventional university, in a Faculty of Education. This video will definitely be useful for you because it's going to provide a clear and practical guide on how to formulate effective instructional objective that support meaningful teaching and learning. Of course, majority of us don't know that whatever you put in your instructional objective matter most. So in this class, you are going to learn what instructional objectives are and why they are matter. The key component of well-written objective. I will also talk about how to align your objective with lesson content and assessment, the difference between cognitive, affective, and psychomotor objective. Of course, this video will also be helpful to show you an example to guide a lesson application. Whether you are preparing to write a lesson note, or you are planning classroom activity, or you are trying to improve your teaching practices, this video will equip you with essential skill to write objectives that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And that is the SMART that we have there. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So, even if you are trying to do practicum preparation or professional classroom practice, this video will definitely guide you. If you are joining this section for the first time, try to subscribe here. Also try to like this video. You can also try to share this video with any teachers in training, either in College of Education or University of Education or University in Faculty of Education, or teachers that are even in service that want to know more about teaching as a profession. So this video is for you. I want to be sure those that are joining me online can hear me clearly. Please, if you can hear me clearly, can you just type yes? I want to be sure that those people joining me online can hear me clearly. If you can hear me clearly, can you go into the comment section and type yes? I'm waiting for you in this comment section. If you can hear me clearly in the comment section, can you type yes? Oh, thank you, Sunday. Thank you, Sunday, and happy Sunday, Sunday. All right, that's nice. So today's class is just going to be focused on the guideline of formulation of instructional objective. In our past video, we have looked at some of those guidelines, but I am trying to do this video just to do a kind of a recap, as well as be practical in what this class is all about. So as a professional teacher, our effectiveness in classroom depends greatly on how clearly we define what learners should be able to do at the end of the lesson. And that is what instructional objective is all about. How learners should be able to do something at the end of the lesson. That should be our focus. So instructional objective guide in teaching or learning activity or in the areas of assessment is going to make learning more purposeful. It's going to make learning more purposeful, more measurable, and also make learning more achievable. So what then is instructional objective? Instructional objectives are behavioral, meaning they describe behaviorable learners' action. They are also immediate because they stated for a specific lesson or unit. They derive from the general objective. Of course, for everything you want to do in life, you will be focused. They will talk about, that's why some people will talk about that. What are your goals? When you see many companies, they will tell you about their objectives. What are the aims and objectives of this company? So the same thing is applicable in teaching. And that is why we say teaching is not just an ordinary job. It is an art. So whosoever that want to know or that want to do something that has to do with teaching, you need to know what it takes to measure the learning outcome of any student. So the general objective is the broader expectation of the subject. So Let's take, for instance, students will understand basic algebraic concepts. I'll just go into mathematics now. Basic algebraic concepts. So I'm going to give you a very two example. I will talk about a topic in sciences. I will also pick a topic in arts to explain what an instructional objective is all about. So let me just say, talking about instructional objective is like when you are talking about the aims and objective of what you intend to achieve at the end of your class, or the overall purpose of schooling, or the overall purpose of your subject, or overall purpose of that particular topic. But this time around, we want to be specific. We want to talk about topic. So that means when you pick a topic, what are the instructional objectives? So instructional objective is like when you understand the relationship among the aims, the general objective, and the instructional objective. So it's going to help you as a teacher to develop a clear and effective lesson plan. And that is why if anybody is coming to check anything on your lesson plan, the first thing they want to see is that what is your instructional objective? And at the end of the day, is your instructional objective in line with your evaluation? So I'm going to talk about hint on how to develop an instructional objective. So the very first hint I will talk about is the hint number one. The objective should be in a declarative statement form. Objective should be in a declarative statement form. That means it must be complete. It must be a clear statement. Not just a phrase. It must be a clear statement, not a phrase. For instance, now, if you say at the end of the lesson, students should understand fraction, or you just say, example, understand fraction. Understand fraction on what? So it should be a clear statement, a complete statement, not a phrase. So a good example of an instructional objective is that we can say, by the end of the lesson, the learner will be able to identify different types of fraction. I've just been telling you that I'm talking about science now. That means I'm talking about mathematics. By the end of the lesson, the learner will be able to identify different types of fraction. So in that wise, the objective should be in a declarative statement form, not in a phrase. That is number one way to develop an instructional objective. Number two, each objective should address one behavioral change. Each objective should address one behavioral change. So you have to avoid missing different learning action in one objective. Not that you talk about learner would define, describe, and solve multiplication problem. No, you have mixed it up. So that is why it's that each objective should address one behavioral change. So instead of you combining all of them together, that learner would define, describe, and solve multiplication problem, you can say learners will define multiplication as repeated addition. You know, I pick something, 1. Learners will define multiplication as repeated addition. Learners will solve simple multiplication problem. You can see that now. He's picking one behavioral change. He's addressing one behavioral change. So number 3, use action verb when starting objectives. You have to use action verb. You have to use an action verb. What's an action verb? An action verb shows exactly what the learner should do. They should make objective observable and measurable. And that is what the SMART is talking about. So I'm going to cite an example. For example, a useful action verb could be identify, explain, describe, compare, construct, solve, demonstrate, classify. Those are examples of an action verb. So as a teacher, you have to use something that will make your learning observable and measurable. So I'm going to cite an example. For example, now, learners will classify animals according to their habitat. Learners will classify animals according to their habitat. So you have the action verb there is classify. The action verb there is what? Is classify. So let me move to number 4. Number 4 is that the objective should reflect the mastery level expectation of the learner. The objective should reflect the mastery level expectation of the learner. So objective must match the level of the learner. That is the blue taxonomy. The blue taxonomy is talking about the knowledge, the comprehension to application. So it's to match with the what? With the learner's level of the level of the learners. I'm going to give you an instance. Let's say, for instance, now, if you are a math teacher and you want to teach students in GSS1, the kind of clear objective you can do, or the mastery level should be, it should be something like learners will add and subtract whole number up to 1,000. It should be mastery level expectation of the learner. At GSS1 now, you can't be asking them to go and be adding number around million, billion. Even some will even go to the level of talking about 1,000, forgetting that the mastery level expectation of the learner is very important. So your objective should reflect the mastery level expected of the learner. So learners will add and subtract whole number up to 1,000. So that means you want them to work within that level. Okay, let me say I go to GSS2 down or SS2 down. I can now talk about learners will solve simultaneous linear equation using elimination method. Learners will solve simultaneous linear equation using substitution method. You can see that at that particular place, I am talking to students in SS2 mathematics. So your objective should reflect the mastery level expected of the learner. So differentiate classes required different mastery levels. So the different mastery level of the student is very important. It's very, very what? It's very important. So let's think of another thing. Let's talk about a joint preparation objective by teachers and students now. I just want to take a kind of a scenario. This approach makes learning collaborative and learner-centered and motivating. So you can say, begin this lesson by asking the learner what they hope to gain from the class. And this is going to help you to connect the lesson to their needs. So sometimes you can just say, okay, today we are starting photosynthesis, maybe in biology class now. What would you like to understand about how plants make foods? And students can just funny or jokingly, they can say, we want to know why sunlight is important in what is it called? In plant process. So in that wise now, that means I have tried to tell you that you are trying to look at that kind of objective instructional objective you are going to frame your work around. So and each of your lesson too should come with questions that introduce the next topics. Each lesson with questions that introduce the next topic. So your target in your instructional objective should be targeting what will be the next thing, what will be the next topic I'll be talking about. So, and this is going to provide you an insight into the learner's interest and readiness. For example, now after a lesson on the fraction, the teacher can ask, what do you think will happen when we try to add two fractions together? Or what challenge do you think you may face? So with that response now is going to prepare them for the next class. Another thing is that you can encourage students to make choice or manage their learning. So those are the steps that are involved in this. So let me move on to the second example. Don't forget that those points that I've just listed, let me try to itemize those points again. Some of the guideline formation of instructional objective. Like I said, the number one is that is the hint you have to use to develop an instructional objective. Number one is that the objective should be in declarative statement form. objective should be in a declarative statement form. Each objective should address one behavioral change. You don't have to combine. Number 3 is that use action verb when you are starting your objective. Use action verb. Number 4 is that the objective should reflect the mastery level of the word of the learner. That is very important. So those are the 4 hints, or let me say those are the 4 guides you have to follow. So like I promised, I'm going to give you 2 examples, and this time around now I'm going to go on a sample for arts. Let's take in an arts class now. Maybe I'm talking about color, and maybe I'm talking about color. Let me talk about color now. Let me talk about color. So in my objective, I can be talking about something like identification of color, and I want to formulate an instructional objective for identification of color now. So I can start the class by saying, oh, you are welcome to this class on identification of color. So, and as a professional teacher, our task is not to teach content, but to define clearly what the learner should be able to do with the knowledge. And that is why most of us miss it. The majority of us, we want to put everything into the brain of the student. So as a professional teacher, our task is not only to teach them the content, is to define clearly what the learner should be able to do with the knowledge they gain. And so this is where instructional objective can come in. So let's take, for instance, now, the first thing there, objective should be declarative statement form. So I'm going to give you an example now. By example, I can say, by the end of the lesson, the learner will be able to identify the primary color. You can see that learners will be able to identify the primary color. That is in the areas of, it should be in a declarative statement form. Number 2, each objective should focus on one behavioral change. One behavioral change, learners will identify primary color, one objective. Learners will mix primary color to form secondary color, one objective. You can see that the 2 of them are talking about 2 different things. The first one, the learners will identify primary color. The second objective, learners will mix primary color to form secondary color. That is another task entirely. So each of those actions become a separate objective. So let's come to the number 3. Instructional objective must use action verb. So what kind of action verb can I use in that place now for the color? I can talk about identify color, point out, name, classify, match, distinguish, select. So those ones, they are what? Action verb. So let me use an action verb in that place now. I can say learners will name at least 5 common color correctly. The action verb there is name. The learners will name at least 5 common color correctly. Let me pick another action verb. Match. How will I use match? Learners will match objective, or learners will match object with their correct color. I can say, which color is this? Color blue. Match it with an object. Or let's say somebody is putting, one of the students is putting on a shirt, or the wear is color blue. I can say learners will match object with their color, correct color. So the action verb that I use in that place is what? Is the word match. So the 4th one, the objective should reflect the learner's mastery level, which is the one that I'm talking about the other time. So in this place now, at this particular place, for elementary students, you can say learners will identify 3 primary color by pointing to color card. At that particular place, you have taught them color, and you brought in into your class different cards. You can say, oh, look at this. Which card is this? Oh, look at this. What color is this? Can you see that? They will tell you this is color so. I can say, oh, look at this. Which color is this? Color black. So on that card is what you are matching, what you are doing on together on. So learners will be able to what? You'll be able to identify 3 primary color by pointing to the color card. You come into the class, you've already put that one into your instructional objective. That's for elementary, for the elementary primary school student. For upper class, you can be talking about distinguish between warm and cold color. Warm and cool color. So at that particular place now, for upper class in primary class, they should be able to know the difference between a warm and a cool colors. For them at junior secondary school, you can now be talking about color again, identification of color. But this time around now, your instructional objective will be different. It could be learners will classify color into primary, secondary, warm, and cool category. So the action there is what? Classify. You want to classify them. So that is that. If that is clear, I want those that are joining me here. I can see some joining me here online. If that is clear, can you say yes? And then we try to move to another class, or let's say we try to move on to look at another topic under behavioral objective. I'm waiting for you in the comment section. Okay, maybe I should just give you some little multiple choice question and let me see how that will play out. If you can hear me clearly, can you type yes? Okay, thank you, Sunday. Let me just drop this question in the chat and tell me the answer in the chat. Just tell me the answer in the chat. I'm sure this will accommodate everything that I have here. Let me just drop something in the comment section. Can you tell me the answer here? Is it going? Can you tell me the answer here? Can you tell me the answer here? Okay, yellow are primary color. No. Yes, I've just dropped a question in the comment section. Can you see the question? Which of the following objectives best demonstrate proper specificity and then clarity? Learners will know the color. A. B. Learners will understand the secondary color. C. Learners will identify the red and the blue color. So which one is the correct answer? In the comment section, which one is the correct answer? In the comment section, which one is the correct answer? In the comment section, which one is the correct answer? I'm waiting for you in the comment section. So I said, which of the following objective best demonstrates proper specificity and clarity? A. Learners will know the color. B. Learners will understand secondary color. C. Learners will identify red, blue, and yellow as primary color. D. Learners will be familiar with the color concept. Which one is the correct answer? At least we have been in this class together. So which one will be the correct answer? Someone said D. Okay, let's get from others that are joining us. Which one is the correct answer? Which of the following objectives best demonstrate proper specificity and then clarity? Okay. When we look at it now, learners will, what is the action verb there? Identify. In that place now, it's talking about clarity. So the answer there is what? The learners will identify red, blue, and yellow as primary color. So the answer there is C. The answer there is C. So Sunday, you have seen that. The answer there is what? Is C. Did you get that, Sunday? Because when you look at option D, the learners will familiar with color. The word familiar, you are not sure. When we look at option B, Learners will understand secondary color. Okay, thank you, Sunday. So the correct answer there is what? The learners will identify. That's the action there. So let's move on to another subtopic under the instructional objective. Here that we'll be talking about taxonomy of instructional objective. Taxonomy of instructional objective. Taxonomy of instructional objective. Of course, like I said, I've just used that one to do a kind of a revision on instructional objectives. So here we'll be talking about taxonomy of instructional objectives. So what is taxonomy? Under this place, we'll be looking at the meaning, the purpose, and classroom application of taxonomy of instructional objective. Taxonomy of instructional objective. So as a teacher, it is important to understand that teaching does not end after presenting a lesson. That's not the end. When you are done with presentation of your class, that's not the end of your teaching. So this clarity is achievable through taxonomy of instructional objective. So now, let's come to think of it. What is taxonomy? Or let me say, what is taxonomy of instructional objective? A taxonomy simply means classification or systematic grouping. So taxonomy simply means classification or systematic grouping. So taxonomy of instructional objective refer to the process of classifying learning objective into hierarchical level based on how to simple or complex the expected learning objective is. The taxonomy objective refer to the process of classifying learning objective into hierarchical level based on how simple or complex the expected learning objective is. For instance, human learning takes place in 3 major dimensions. Human learning. I know majority of us, while you are growing up in your secondary school days, they'll be talking about 3 domains of teaching. So we talk about affective, cognitive, psychomotor. In fact, some people don't even know the difference when they say cognitive, affective, psychomotor. So, but I'm going to clearly define the 3. When we talk about cognitive, it's all about thinking. It has to do with academic. Cognitive, thinking. Cognitive, that is thinking. Affective, that has to do with feeling or value or attitude. Something that has to do with feeling, value, or attitude. Then psychomotor, on the other hand, it has to do with skill or physical action. And that is why when they talk about psychomotor domain, they will say they were going to judge you using the 3 domains. So when they talk about cognitive, that is talking about your thinking, your academic level. Affective, that is your feeling, your value, your relationship with other people. That's your affective domain. Then psychomotor domain, your skill. So they mention the learning outcome in any place that we're talking about it. These 3 domains is what form your instructional objective. So these 3 dimensions reflect the totality of human personality. So a good teacher plans instructional objective across the 3 levels. So therefore, taxonomy of instructional objective refers to the process of classifying learning objective into the hierarchical level based on how simple or complex the expected learning objective is. And it's going to be based on that 3 dimensions. The cognitive, that has to do with thinking. The affective, that has to do with feeling, value, or attitude. Then the psychomotor, that has to do with what? With skills or psychomotor or physical action. And that is why when you check your, I don't know if you can still take your time to go and check your dossier or the one we call report card when we are in secondary school, you see that it's basically divided into 3. The one that has to do with your mark, the mark you get in the class, that one talk about cognitive. That is when they measure your thinking. Then there's a particular place where they talk about the affective. So that some of you that will be going on teaching practice, when they talk about what is the affective domain of that student, they were actually talking about the feeling, the value, the attitude of that student. Is he a student that relates with other students freely? What kind of relationship did he have with other students? Is he the type that always feel moody? Is he the type that doesn't want students around him or her? Is he the type that always look for troubles of others? If he's looking for troubles of others, it means in the affective domains of that student is very what? Low. Then the third one is the cognitive domain. Sorry, the psychomotor domain. The psychomotor domain has to do with the skill. Some students are not that good academically, but when it comes to, hey, come and run, you see them, they will be the one becoming first. When they do jump, when they do long jump, they will be the first. When they do high jump, they are the first. When they do 100 meter, they are the first. So the psychomotor domain of such child is what? Is very high. So that's why I said these three dimensions reflect the totality of human personality, and a good teacher needs to plan your instructional objective around that area. So let's look at the purpose and benefit of taxonomy. One of the benefits is that it makes lesson planning systematic. It makes learning planning systematic. One of the benefits or the purpose of taxonomy in education is that it makes your lesson planning systematic. When objectives are arranged from simple to complex, teachers can teach step by step. I've cited an example the other time. Maybe you want to talk about arithmetic now. Of course, in your arithmetic class, you must not go and start with division. You have to talk about addition. From there, you move to subtraction. From there, you move to multiplication before you talk about division. So addition, 2 plus 2 is equals to 4. Subtraction, take away 2 from 2, it will give you 0. Multiplication, 2 multiplied by 2 will give you 4. That is 2 multiplied in 2 places will give you 4. Then when you use 2 to divide 4, it will give you 2. So your teaching should be from simple to what? To complex. So it's going to make your learning planning systematic. So for example, by asking the learner to analyze a poem, they must first identify the words and explain its meaning. You can't just say at the end of the learning lesson, the learner should be able to identify a poem. So they must first of all identify the word and explain the meaning. So number 2 purpose is that it helps learner to master content gradually. And that is why you see that those people that are doing the curriculum, that are doing the planning for us, they always plan from simple to what? To complex. So that one knowledge at a time. So objective arranged hierarchically ensure movement from easy to moderate to what? To difficult, helping the learner to gain mastery. For example, I will still use that color. For example, now, if I talk about that color that I used under the classification of instructional objective, if I talk about color identification, the first thing I have to do is to what? Identify primary color. The next one is distinguish between warm and cool color. The next one is analyze color combination in art. So in that wise, I'll take my things from simple to complex. The third purpose is that it reviews the level at which learning is taking place. It reviews the level at which the learning is what is taking place. So teacher can easily detect whether a learner is what is taught at recall or progressing towards application or evaluation. You know, you are talking about from simple to complex now. So number 4 benefit or number 4 purpose is that it shows the learners areas of strength or comparative advantage. For example, a learner who performs better in hands-on activity, that is the psychomotor, where we'll be using his or her skill, might excel in drawing or crafting compared to theoretical work. So in that wise now, when you ask them, okay, can you draw a color now? Can you mix two colors together? And it start mixing. From there, oh, this child is very skillful. So that means you are measuring the psychomotor domain. Is that clear now? So let me talk about the third objective is that it revealed unique features of different subjects. One of the benefits or purpose of taxonomy of education is that what it reveals unique features of different subjects. Some subjects are heavy in cognitive, like mathematics now. Mathematics doesn't require you saying you are talking about psychomotor. So it reveals unique features of different subjects. So for subjects like mathematics now, it's purely cognitive skill. Other subjects in psychomotor skills can be technical drawing. When you see a child that knows how to draw very well, he started knowing how to draw. Now, this one is going to be better in the areas of the psychomotor domain. Others in affective domain is talking about the civic education, Christian religion study. That is where you'll be talking about empathy. You know, in that place now, when you start talking about empathy, a child will be able to define empathy easily. A child that is good in the areas of affective domain will be able to tell you an empathy is when you are feeling for someone, when you are doing this. That is what that child does. But a child that is all about academics, he will tell you once you give a question like this, he solve and go away from there. It goes away from there. So the third one we are going to quickly talk about is that I want to dwell more on the domain of instructional objective now. The domain now. I will talk about the domain now. Let me talk more on it. I'll talk about the cognitive domain. That is the one that talk about thinking skill. I talk about the cognitive domain, talk about thinking skill, while the affective domain talk about the value, the attitude. The psychomotor domain talk about the skills, the skill, that is the physical skill. So let me talk about the cognitive domain now, which is the thinking skill. It was developed by Benjamin Blooms in 1956. The cognitive domain deal with knowledge and intellectual ability. The cognitive domain deal with knowledge and intellectual ability. So below are Bloom level with explanation. So I'm going to quickly talk about the Bloom taxonomy, and I will use example. So the Bloom taxonomy is basically on the areas of 6. The Bloom taxonomy on the cognitive is on 6 level. It's on 6 level. So I'll talk about them. It's on 6 level. Let me know if you can still hear me clearly. Let me know if you can still hear me clearly. If you can hear me clearly, can you type yes? So if you can hear me clearly, can you type yes? All right. So what we are going to do is that, okay, thank you very much, Sunday. In the next 5 minutes, I will go on break, and I will come back for the next video, which will be talking about the yes, I will go out now and I'll be talking about the explanation of the 3 domain of education: the cognitive, the affective, and the psychomotor. So I'll be talking about that. So let's go on break of 5 minutes.